What's the most wholesome experience you've had with a stranger? I was in the hospital, knowing I'd be there for at least a week, and possibly more. I was sick of hospital food. So I went downstairs to go across the street to the hospital subway. I was pretty far back in the hospital's 6th floor. Backside of the building. Labyrinth of staircases and hallways to get out the front door. The walk from there to subway took almost 15 minutes. Even though it was just across the street, I waited in line, got up to the counter to order, and realized I'd left my wallet in my room. I ordinarily keep my wallet in my back pocket, but there was no need to in the hospital, since I was in my room most of the time. I was exhausted mentally by that point from the stay, told them I'd forgotten the wallet, and turned to make the trek all the way there and back again. All of a sudden, a nurse behind me bought my food for me, saving me the trip and the money. I thanked him profusely. That was years ago, but I will never forget that act of kindness. I was traveling from the south of England to the north of Scotland to start a new job the next morning. I had taken a train up to London and was supposed to get on an early morning flight from Heathrow. The bus to the airport, however, was cancelled and I had to make my own way using a series of night buses. However, it was about 2:30 am and my phone was dead, and I had never used London's night buses before. I was young and a little scared, standing in the middle of Victoria trying to figure out the faded bus schedule, when a woman came up to me and asked, "Are you alright, love?" And I explained through tears that I thought I was going to miss my flight and didn't even have an Oyster card. She looked up my route on her phone, wrote down all the possible variations of buses and trains that I would need to take, including the times. She waited with me the entire time, like 20 minutes. Then when the bus came up, she paid for my fare, no cash on London buses. I got out and looked to her and she shrugged and said, "Oh, I'm not getting the bus. You just looked like you needed someone." I think about her every once in a while, and I'm incredibly grateful for her. I was in an abusive relationship, and it ended with him beating me up very badly. Broken ribs, bruises and cuts all over me. He was arrested, but the process and aftermath was heck. It was spring, and the weather was warming. But for weeks I wore long sleeves and high collars to hide the cuts and bruises. Eventually everything healed and faded, except one very deep bruise on my upper arm. I had had enough of hiding them in shame, so one day I said frick it, and wore short sleeves. I was standing in line in Walmart, and noticed this rough biker looking dude staring at me. I thought he was checking me out, or whatever. Then he asked me how I got that bruise on my arm. I stumbled answering, and he outright asked, "Did somebody hurt you?" For some reason I decided to be honest, and not lie in shame. So I said out loud, "Yes, somebody hurt me." He looked at me and in the kindest voice said, "You did not deserve that. Whoever it was will get what's due to them one day." For some reason, that was a turning point for me. I knew then that I was going to be okay. I knew that, no matter how things turned out legally, that I was going to be okay. I never saw that man again, but I honestly think he was an angel sent to give me a message. My card declined at a fast food place a couple years ago. The manager saw it happening and came up and gave me the food anyway. It may have come from a duck this establishment mood rather than the unrelenting kindness of his heart, but either way it really made my day. Once went out to a restaurant for a meal. Earlier the same day we found out that one of my partner's relatives, someone they were close to, had killed themselves. We thought it would be a good idea to get out of the house and distract ourselves. Our waitress was lovely and spoke to us throughout the meal as it was quiet, and she seemed fun. At the end of the meal, and many wines, my partner was visibly emotional, not crazy, just sad looking. The waitress asked us if we were okay and saw that my partner was upset, so she asked again. We told her what had happened. She was shocked, and it was obvious she really felt for my partner. A few minutes later, she came over with some limoncello shots and said it's on the house, which was unexpected and lovely. We protested a bit, but she said, "I'm managing tonight. It's little things like this that make me like working here, because I can make your night a bit better." What a legend. It gets even more lovely though. We asked her for the bill shortly after, and when it arrived, It read 00.00. She had discounted the whole bill, putting it through as wastage. We were shocked and had a tearful goodbye with her after many protests and finding it unbelievable. We'd had a 3-course meal, wine and beer, loads of sides. We went to town and she just covered it because my partner was sad. I'll remember it forever. She could have kept herself to herself and ignored us, but that moment of kindness meant too much to us that day and turned it from a shitty day to a less shitty day. I once took my son to a local science center for a day of fun. I also have cerebral palsy. I get around well enough. Sometimes I use a wooden cane, but I'm alright unsupported. I rock a mean limp and have terrible balance. But if you were to see me walking around, most would just assume I had been injured at some point. While walking around, I spotted this woman with a young daughter of maybe 7, 8 using a walker and sporting a pair of leg braces. The mother and I locked eyes a few times throughout our free roaming day until eventually our kids started interacting with the same exhibit. We were standing there watching them, and I turned to the mother, and before I could even speak she said, "Cerebral palsy, you too." Huh. We ended up spending the rest of our day together chatting about our lives and experiences, and going over the many advancements and therapies that have been developed since my childhood. She ended up telling me at the end of the day that seeing me being a single dad to my son and being so independent in spite of my disability gave her a lot of peace of mind. She said she worried a lot about what her daughter's future might hold in terms of her independence. It was just an all-around really nice experience. I had a knock on my door, and when I opened it, there was a stranger with a gift card to a local garden store for me. Apparently her kid had been pinching tulips from my garden every day to give to his mom, and they wanted to pay for them. Once they figured out whose garden they were coming from, I had thought squirrels were doing it and had regretted planting them the year before, not being able to enjoy them. I spent the gift card on more bulbs. I moved 1,000 miles away from everything I knew after graduating college 16 years ago. Back then I was pretty homesick, struggling in my career and figuring things out, so I felt pretty lost in life. One day I was walking around downtown Orlando when an older man, probably in his mid-80s, stopped me. He handed a piece of paper that he was carrying to me and said, "You seem like a good person with a good heart. It will be alright." Then he just walked away. Looking down, that piece of paper was a copy of a handwritten page by him filled with dozens and dozens of sayings, illustrations and quotes from all over the world regarding love and hope. Tears came immediately, and I put it away to read later that day. It stayed on my wall in my home for the better part of 10 years, until I moved again. Now it's been 16 years since then, and sure, he's moved on to the next world by now. I still have that page. Take it out occasionally and think about that wonderful man from many years ago who taught me about pure and genuine random acts of kindness right along with love and hope. He was an absolute blessing to me and to our world. Thank you, good sir. You were a beautiful soul. I was in London and was supposed to be flying home that day, walking down the street with my 2 suitcases towards the tube station nice and early on my way to Heathrow with plenty of time. Silly me didn't realize that when the sign said there is going to be a tube strike on the day you fly home, that means the tube is completely closed. I thought it just meant delays or something. I don't know. I start walking toward the bus station a few blocks away, desperately trying to come up with a plan B. A young man comes up to me and offers to help carry my suitcases. He asks where I'm going, and I say Heathrow, which is an hour away at this point in time, until my flight is running short. It starts raining. He says you'll never make it there on time on the buses. He calls me a cab, then finds a little awning where we can sit and wait for the cab and stay out of the rain. He lets me use his phone to transfer money to pay for the cab. Mine didn't have service outside my home country. We just sat and chatted for 30 minutes waiting for this cab, and he made me feel so much less panicked. I just couldn't believe the kindness he showed to some random person on the street, and I've never been able to find him again online to thank him. This happened when I was around 9 or 10. I was out riding my bike with my mum, and halfway through the trail, my bike breaks down. Anyway, we couldn't carry the bike back home, since it would take hours. So we were just stranded in that field. There were a few people on the trail who saw our inconvenience, but either they didn't have any bike knowledge to know how to fix it, or they couldn't be bothered to care. At least an hour had passed before this old man, and I mean like real old, he looked to be around 80, approached us and fixed our bike free of charge. He got his hands down to the grease, and eventually after a few minutes I could start pedaling again. I thought that was a really wholesome moment. His kindness and coolness to our situation. And that's why this memory sticks to me, I guess. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.